about?
I have no comment. Thank you. Have a good New Year.
Do you think they're...
I said I don't have any comment, but thank you.
Well, but counsel, what about due process? I mean, to have a dispute with somebody who's the one deciding the dispute seems like there might be a problem there.
That organization was as much a victim as Coach Gruden was here because they received the unlawful influence and pressure from the NFL parties.
Ladies and gentlemen, we just witnessed the final showdown between Jon Gruden and the NFL before we find out if Gruden's lawsuit goes to trial. Will the NFL's nightmare come true, or will Jon Gruden's case ultimately be dismissed? This was a heated back and forth in front of the Nevada Supreme Court, and we're gonna break everything down. So Jon Gruden is suing the NFL and Roger Goodell, the commissioner, specifically, alleging that they tortiously leaked Gruden's emails to the press, causing Gruden to resign and reputational injury. The Raiders are not involved in this because Mark Davis never wanted to let Jon Gruden go.
Because the only thing we've seen is the emails that Jon had. And we haven't seen any of the others and anything else. So that's basically what again, what I had said initially was that, ask the NFL. They've got all the answers. We really don't. They claim that nobody said anything or anything else has been like that. They've seen all the emails. They've seen everything. We have not.
And this is going to be a really important detail that we'll get into later. Seems like the NFL might be a little heated at Mark Davis. We know Jon Gruden has said that he wants to burn the house down and he is out for blood and he wants to find out who did this to him and make sure that they are in trouble for it. That being, according to him, the NFL and Roger Goodell. So what's been happening over this past year is the NFL has been trying to push this case to arbitration.
An issue is whether Gruden should be bound by the NFL's constitution, even though he's no longer an employee there.
They do not want Gruden's case to actually go to a trial because then there would be an investigation by Gruden's lawyers. They could even interview certain people like the commissioner, like certain owners, and find more data and emails out there to find out who leaked Gruden's emails. And actually, Judge Nancy Elf of a Nevada district court denied the NFL's motion to compel arbitration and ruled in favor of Jon Gruden, and she did not seem happy with the NFL the whole time.
I'm not going to get into the content of these emails. They are not fit to be repeated in a public courtroom. I think no reasonable person can conclude that that is not conduct detrimental to the league. To have
But it was years ago. It was before you signed this contract. Motion to compel arbitration is going to be denied.
So after the NFL took a L in front of Nancy Elf, they then filed another appeal, but this time with the Nevada Supreme Court. And that is what this hearing is that we're gonna break down. What these three justices are doing is they're hearing the arguments from each side on whether this case should go to arbitration or go to a trial. If it goes under arbitration, like we mentioned earlier, we would have to hope that Roger Goodell finds Gruden's claims against Roger Goodell as conduct detrimental to the league, and then Goodell would issue out his own discipline to himself. So that's what was being decided this week. The judges quickly took issue with the NFL's claim that the commissioner Roger Goodell could be the arbiter over Gruden's case.
Practical matter, how does it work for the commissioner to be a party to the dispute and the arbiter of the dispute?
that this court need not reach that question once it concludes that the provision in the NFL Constitution applies.
But counsel, what about due process? I mean, to have a dispute with somebody who's the one deciding the dispute seems like there might be a problem there.
Yeah, so
NFL's lawyer is claiming that we should not even have to reach that point in entering that discussion of Goodell overseeing his own punishment. All we need to be concerned with is the fact that the NFL is allowed to handle this internally because Gruden was at some point an employee of the NFL.
But when Gruden entered into his contract with the Raiders, the richest coaching contract in NFL history, he agreed to two broad arbitration provisions that cover all disputes arising out of his employment agreement or involving conduct detrimental to the league.
Maybe Goodell, if this was handled internally, maybe he might appoint somebody else to be the arbiter over Gruden's case, and then it would be more neutral.
The commissioner has the authority to designate someone else to serve as the arbitrator. The commissioner could designate someone else to serve as the arbitrator, and that would alleviate any concern about bias.
We're supposed to believe that Roger Goodell would select an arbiter that would not be just completely biased in favor of Roger Goodell. And they're invoking the NFL Constitution, a specific section of this Constitution, which really isn't that long. It's the commissioner section of it. And it's basically just saying that the commissioner has complete and final jurisdiction jurisdiction to arbitrate any dispute involving two or more members of the league or two or more holders of ownership of the league. But what the judges keep bringing up about all these clauses in this constitution is that it doesn't take into account if the commissioner is himself one of the parties in a dispute within the NFL.
Could read Article 8 read as a whole to say it reaches disciplinary matters and that 8.3e is a catch-all, but that it does not include the commissioner and the NFL, because while it lists everybody else, it doesn't list them.
So there is no such limitation on the face of Article 8.3 to disciplinary proceedings.
The NFL is trying to act like Goodell could oversee any lawsuit that happens with the NFL, and it should not go to court just because some of the parties involved were at one point employed by the NFL.
Section 8.3 only covers disputes where it is the opinion of the commissioner that the conduct is detrimental.
Gruden's lawyer brings up the fact that this would mean that almost anything that Goodell thinks is conduct detrimental to the league could then be handled by arbitration, maybe even somebody's divorce that they're having.
That clause has never been enforced in a situation like this, and nor can it be enforced because it's wholly illusory and one-sided. It would allow, in response to some of your hypotheticals, the commissioner to determine that a private divorce proceeding involved conduct detrimental and thus was referred to arbitration, that a sexual harassment charge against a member of the league involved conduct detrimental.
And if you're no longer an employee of the NFL like Jon Gruden, why should this still apply?
By its language, does 8.3e apply? Why or why not?
One, because it only applies to current members of the league, and we don't think that the NFL Constitution should apply to former members indefinitely.
But the NFL tried to bring up the Constitution that we mentioned earlier, and actually Jon Gruden's employment contract with the Raiders. And this is where the Raiders get involved, and this is where Jon Gruden's lawyer kind of struggled during the hearing.
Did Mr. Gruden not have counsel representing him when he agreed to the contract?
To my knowledge, he did not, Your Honor.
He did not.
He did not.
He negotiated this contract with the Raiders without counsel to review it.
Your Honor, there's nothing in the record indicating that he had counsel present when he signed it or that it was explained to him. It was not provided to him at the time, and there's a difference here.
That's a difference between not provided to him and not available.
The NFL and their legal team are basically saying that this should go to arbitration because of the NFL Constitution. They claim that by signing an employment contract, you ultimately agree with the NFL Constitution and that it covers this case.
Now, in particular, the arbitration provision in the NFL Constitution, which was unambiguously incorporated into Gruden's employment agreement, covers the claims in this dispute.
But Jon Gruden's lawyers are claiming that they're not suing for wrongful termination. They have no problem with the Raiders. So they believe bringing up Gruden's employment contract with the Raiders is irrelevant.
Not here, where the Raiders could not have worked together with the NFL parties. There's no allegation that they did, and the claims are entirely separate and distinct. We are not bringing a claim for wrongful termination. We are bringing claims for tortious interference from the external actions that the NFL parties took, the leaking of the emails and the pressuring of the Raiders, which is a separate and distinct action from the wrongful termination of the contract by the Raiders. That organization was as much a victim as Coach Gruden was here because they received the unlawful influence and pressure from the NFL parties, rather than being a co-conspirator or someone that we could have possibly named for the same conduct.
What's interesting is the NFL seems frustrated with the Raiders, the fact that the Raiders are not part of this lawsuit. It would actually make it a lot easier for the NFL if they were.
In some sense, this is a very artificial case because but for the fact that for whatever reason, the Raiders settled out of this case and paid Coach Gruden an undisclosed sum, this would be a case where we would be operating alongside the Raiders.
It seems like the fact that the Raiders settled with Jon Gruden outside of the NFL. This is allowing Gruden to bypass this issue with the NFL Constitution. According to Gruden's legal team, this is not a dispute between Gruden and another club or member of the NFL, but the NFL and the commissioner themselves. The fact that Mark Davis settled with Gruden allowed Gruden's legal team to keep the Raiders out of it, and therefore make this case not a wrongful termination dispute, but a claim about the external pressure that the NFL placed on the Raiders, ending Gruden's career. The NFL seems also upset about the article by ESPN written by Dan Van Natta and a number of other writers, in which Mark Davis makes the claim that it felt like a setup And in this article, he explains how the NFL pressured him to let Jon Gruden go. The NFL's legal team is trying to mock Jon Gruden for putting this article as evidence inside the case.
It is telling that my friends on the other side are now attempting to supplement the record with articles from ESPN to buttress allegations in the complaint that are completely threadbare.
Either way, these three justices will decide on this case in the coming weeks. If Jon Gruden succeeds, he will have more leverage than ever against the NFL, and who knows what he's going to get out of this, because they want to make sure this stops, because if it doesn't stop, a lot more leaks and a lot more details are going to be released about how the NFL actually works. But we all know Jon Gruden wants to coach again. We know there's mutual expressed interest between him and the New Orleans Saints, where he could reunite with several former Raiders players, including quarterback Derek Carr. I believe even if Jon Gruden is not successful, even if this is forced into arbitration, I still don't think that necessarily bars him from the NFL. I believe he'll still be able to participate in the NFL again, and that is likely why he's talking to the New Orleans Saints. It seems like it would be difficult for his lawsuit for him to be employed in the NFL at the same time while continuing with this lawsuit, even if the Nevada Supreme Court rules in his favor. So in my opinion, and this is me just guessing, it seems like he is setting the grounds to settle or just return to the NFL even if this case is dismissed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, what you believe Jon Gruden is going to do. Do you think he has a chance here? Do you think the three justices will rule in his favor? I want to hear from you. And if you're still watching at this point in this video, man, we really appreciate you. Not everybody watches all the way through. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and like this video if you want to keep supporting more content from me, Wi-Fi Willie. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.